Hi, welcome to my studio again, beautiful people. At any rate, this is one of my paintings I've done a little while ago, and I seem to be drawn to landscapes and some geometric forms because it allows me to play with many different dimensions, which I call ether realism. At any rate, aside from that, I want to basically uh, entertain you guys with some of the events that basically shaped me into the artist that I am today. Because as an artist, I think that we all want to know how to paint and draw and all those things. But there are also other elements which I'd like to point out is that life itself becomes a teacher, and I think as an artist, it's a much better route to take if you force yourself from coming from the inside out rather than somebody drilling a hole into you like a branch and sticking it in like you would in an art school and saying, now you have to follow this path. At any rate, I was a rebel. I never did follow that except for a short time. So going back to my life story, we moved over to Austria after we left Hungary, and they took us to a little place called Judenau. I may have mentioned it in my last video, but at any rate, there were other things in Judenau that had an effect on me. And it wasn't just basically the artist that had this big painting where I said something and split half the castle into an argument with one another. But there were some interesting things from my perspective as a kid. Now, I never had a chance to really taste hot chocolate, like real chocolate. The Austrians offered that very kindly, and they offered some nice food, and they also played movies for us at night. That's where I got introduced to the Zorro series, black and white, and there were other kind of interesting movies, such as I would say cowboy movies and nature movies. So it kind of gave me a chance to experience a very different culture to what I was embedded in Hungary. Anyways, a few days later, after we were there, we had to go to Vienna from Judenau to visit the American consulate because they were going to interview us. So we came into Vienna, and it was a beautiful city. I have to say the Danube is much more narrow than the Danube in Budapest. But anyways, Vienna was quite beautiful, narrow streets, beautiful architecture, and we went by things like the museum and art gallery, etc. like that. At any rate, when we went to the consulate, we were told that unfortunately the quota for to go to America was filled, and we were not basically capable of going to U.S. My mother was terribly disappointed because it was her dream all of her life to go to America, the land of the free and the beautiful. At any rate, the Canadian consulate and the same, I guess, in the same place, told us that never mind about that. The truth is, Canada would be very happy to take us in as immigrants, and that we were actually on the border of the US. And who knows, somewhere down the line, maybe you can actually visit or move in or whatever. So we got very, very excited over that. And so we went back to Utah now. And what do you call it? Since they told us that Canada would accept us, they started to play some movies that basically demonstrated to us what the Canadian college was all about. So we saw some beautiful nature photographs of BC and the big Great Lakes and all the big cities that were in Canada. And they also basically showed some movies about some of the artists, and there were some movies about the group of seven. I may have mentioned that in my last video, but it's okay. The group of seven had a pretty interesting effect on me because they were showing the art, like Tom Thompson, one of the artists of the group of seven, and he was basically a wild-looking young man who was working, obviously, I think, in Northern Ontario, and he had unbelievable palette board of reds and yellows, and you name the colors, it was on there in huge globs of oil paint. Well, that really influenced me, and I thought, wow, now that is exciting. I could hardly wait to get some oils myself. At any rate, that went on, and then eventually got to the point where they had to remove us because there were other people coming in. So they took us to Kirchschlag, which was a skiing resort in Austria, a beautiful mountain, forest, and all that stuff. At any rate, we arrived at Kirchschlag, and some of those stories I'm going to tell you in my next video because there's some fun things to talk about there. At any rate, thank you for visiting. And I would like to ask you if it's possible, if you have any interest, to subscribe and please like the video because let's face it, with this looks and this mentality that I have, you guys will keep on, you know, inspiring me to make more videos. Thank you.